Okay, we're dedicating this session of the Alshech HaKadosh on the Chumash at the Alshech Academy to Le'iloi Nishmat Mordechai Yisrael Tzvi ben Moshe Aaron. Neshama should have an aliyah.
Amen.
Okay, so we will be picking up in the piece of Alshech that talks about Adam being banished. We asked, why is it that it says that first God sent him out of the garden, and then it says that he divorced him or exiled him? We asked about those two questions, and we also asked, it says, Vayishalchehu, where did God send him? La'avod es ha'adama asher lukach sham, misham, that he was sent to serve or to cultivate or to serve, avoda, right? Asher, right, la'avod, to serve, work the land that he was taken from. And we asked, what is the significance of that? Okay, and then we started talking about the horn and the hoof. And we talked about the karban of Adam Rishon, that he brought the par of makrin mafris, the pasuk in Tehillim says, we mentioned that. And we asked some questions, and we said that there was two pshatim on makrin mafris, either, right, why would it be that that David HaMelech is saying that he's going to bring a toda, a thanksgiving offering, which will make God happier than Adam Rishon's karban, which is described as a makrin mafris, of the horn and of the hoof. So one Mandamer said that the horn precedes the hoof. That's the problem. That's why there's something lacking in Adam Rishon's karban that David HaMelech says that his karban will be better than. And the other Mandamar says that, meaning everybody agrees that when the verse says makrin mafris, of horn and hoof, it is qualifying Adam Rishon's karban in the context of what David HaMelech is saying, meaning it's an explanation for why somehow there's something lacking in Adam's karban that will be included in David's karban. So one opinion is that when the verse says of horn and hoof, because the horn preceded the hoof. And the other one is that it only had one horn, that it was makrin, means it was a unicorn. So we mentioned those two opinions. We're going to pick up from the second full paragraph on page 55 in my edition, and then hey, ach efshar. However, it is possible, ki be'inyan pshato lo yechalko, in terms of, even though one opinion says that it had two horns and one opinion says it has one horn, they are not arguing in terms of their understanding of the meaning of the verse in Tehillim. Ki be'inyan bechinat haremes, they're arguing about how the pasuk is articulating the symbolism, but they basically agree. Here, the Alshech HaKadosh is going to explain. The common denominator that both opinions have is shekol echad hukshu lo b'ksav shnei dvar. Both opinions that were expressed upon reading the verse, they had two things that were bothering them. Two questions. Echad, the first. Ma chesono shel hashar par hahu. What was lacking in Adam Harishon's sacrifice of the shar par, that particular sacrifice? Sheha'atid yetiv la'Hashem mimenu. That what was lacking, that the verse in Tehillim, that David HaMelech says that in the future he will bring a sacrifice which is greater to God than that. Ve'od, and the second question that they had was ma ba lahodia shahiyat makrim mafris. What is the import of the verse telling me that it was of the horn and of the hoof? Ki halo kol shor par kenu. Every bull has horns and hoofs. V'da'asa Omer Rishon, according to the first opinion, that said, Ki ba hakatuv lahashiv le'mar ta'am el meshi yitav la'Hashem mishor par shel Adam Harishon mipnei shayu karnotav kodmot le'par sotav. According to the first opinion that said, you know why that sacrifice of Adam Rishon was lacking? Because its horns preceded its hoofs. So he's not pointing out here that the word in the verse for horn is singular. He doesn't care whether it's one horn or two horns. He'll assume that the mention here of horn is for all the horn, meaning many horns. But the point of the verse is that the horn preceded the hoof. What's he going to? What does he mean by that? Because this particular creature that Adam Rishon brought to sacrifice its horns preceded its hoofs. Kalomar, that is to say, kiba al avon, that the purpose for this sacrifice was to rectify a sin. Ki kadmu negichotav lahazik becheto leparsotav shehem simanei taharato. That if you look at the symbolism of the horn and the hoof of a kosher animal, the horn is its ability to render damage, to cause damage, and its hoof is a sign that it is kosher. So this sage is telling us something very deeper. He's saying that when the verse says of horn and hoof, it's saying that this particular animal, it was coming to rectify a situation where the ability to cause damage had preceded the sign of kashrus. Meaning, just generally speaking, there are two basic reasons why you could bring a sacrifice. One is because you want to you want to build a relationship, and the other is you need to rectify the relationship, right? So the ability to build a relationship, that you want to invest in a relationship with God, and you're doing it through holy service, that's a sign of kashrus. That's your hoof. When you have to mend the relationship and you do service to rectify a lacking because of damage that you have caused, that's coming to address the horn. So here, the first carbon in the whole world, the first carbon that humanity brought, that Adam Rishon brought, unfortunately, it was in the context of mending the relationship, and it was not in the terms of investing, and it wasn't just a carbon as a way of getting close. You know, the word carbon, literally, hakrava, means to come close, kiruf. It means to come close to God, and this sacrifice was brought because there was a necessity, because Adam Rishon had used his horn, so to speak. Okay, so the symbolism here of the verse telling me that the horn precedes the hoof means that this particular carbon, the tragedy of it was that it was a carbon that in the history of carbon sacrifices here, the horn preceded the hoof. The carbon was brought for the horn, so to speak, as opposed to the hoof first. And that was sad to Hashem, so to speak. Okay, so the Todah that David HaMelech says he's going to bring, the Thanksgiving offering, right, is going to be greater than whatever the sacrifice of Adam Rishon came to achieve, because it was just there to actually rectify something wrong. Right. Okay? So that's according to the first opinion. That's the explanation of how he understood that the horn preceded the hoof. Okay? So Masha Enkein La'atid, but the opposite is true in the future. When the sacrifice will be brought, it won't be because of a precedent of sin. Vidat ha'acher. So that's the first opinion. The second opinion, Vidat ha'acher, the opinion said, you know what the verse is telling me? You know what was wrong with Adam Rishon's sacrifice? It only had one horn, not two. The first one was, it's not a question of the number of horns, it's that the horn preceded the hoof. Here he's saying, you know what, it only had one horn, and that's the problem. Let's explain, because it's going to be a total spin, because the first one saying the horn is, according to the first opinion, the horn is identifying the ability to cause damage. Yeah. Here, we're saying the power, the virility of the sacrifice, what the sacrifice can achieve. And it has two horns. Here we're going to contrast it with two horns. V'das ha'acher, and the second opinion, husha katuv notein tam b'derech acheret. The verse is actually giving a different approach, a different explanation as to what the lacking of Adam Rishon's carbon was. V'hu me'ein ma'amar Ramzal, and this is similar to the statement of our sages, al elo shel Yitzchak, the ram of Yitzchak's Akedah. Right? We know that the ram kind of stood in the stead of Yitzchak when God told Avram Avinu not to go through with it with Yitzchak, so Avram felt compelled to bring a carbon instead, and that's called the Elo Shel Yitzchak, the ram of Yitzchak, and we know that it had two horns, Kishnei Karnav Ho Elo, both those horns ended up helping, had a great power in the future. What were they? Echad L'Shofar Shel Matan Torah, one of its horns was used as the shofar to herald the presence of God at Har Sinai in unprecedented manner. V'shel Yamin, that was the left side. And the right horn that was left, these were the shirayim, the leftovers of the aisle of the Akedah, the horn of the right side, l'shofar la'atid lavo, when you say in the Amidah, tekah, that God should blast the shofar gadol, the cherutenu, the great shofar for our ultimate redemption, we're referring to this right horn. So that means that the impact of the carbon that Avram Avinu brought by the Akedah not only made provision for a connection, it somehow sealed the deal and gave us the power to have a revelation, whatever the revelation was in Matan Torah, but also ultimately the Akedah itself will be the schut that will herald the Mashiach, right? So it had two horns. But Adam Arishon's carbon only had one horn. What's that? Let's see. Let's get to the point. Amar, the verse in Tehillim says, V'titav la'Hashem, and it will be good to God, meaning the thanksgiving offering, David HaMelech says, that I'm going to bring will be greater to God, mishor par, from the bull cow, the bull animal, shel Adam Arishon, that Adam brought, ki lo ho'il zchut ha'karban hahu lizman zeh v'la'atid, because the power, the benefit, or the positive effect of Adam Rishon's carbon, it only was for that time, but not for the future. It did not create any sort of merit that stood in future stead. Kishal Yitzchak, like Yitzchak's. Ki im karen achat haytalo, it only had one horn. Shehu liot lo cheirot ma, shelo meit biyoma ad tisha meot shlashim shana. He says, you know what that was? That saved Adam from dying immediately on that spot, and that gave him to the ripe old age of 930. So now I'm just going to review here for a second, just so you have, everybody asked the question. Adam Rishon's told that on the day that he eats from the Eitz Hadat, he's going to die. And yet, he lives to be 930. So, Chazal point out, the Pasuk in Tehillim, it says that one day in your eyes is like 1,000 years. So when God said that on that day, that means that when he becomes mortal, he'll have 1,000 years. So then why did Adam only live to 930? Rashi brings us all into Tehillim. Why did Adam Rishon only live to 930? So that's where the Medrash comes in, that the last 70 years of his life he gave away to David. Okay? I
don't understand the wording here, because it says he didn't die al tesha. Okay.
Shalom meit biyomo. He didn't die on that actual day that he ate from it. Ad tisha me'ot shloshim shana, until 930 years. V'shivim shana, and the 70 years, Sham Rabbeinu Zal, the Chazal say, Shenisharu me'a'elef l'dorot olam, that was really part of the cheshbon of 1,000 years for the generations of the world. Ach lo ho'il gam la'atid lavo, v'gam zeh me'atam ha'kodem ki ba al avo.
So he did last 930 years because of that korban? As a result of that korban?
So he wants to put the two together and say it bought him time. So, meaning I was presenting what Chazal traditionally approach this, because they explain in the Pasuk in Tehillim that the Pasuk in Tehillim is coming to say that one day in God's eyes is like 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So, presuming that that's true, then there's no conflict with God saying on the day you eat, you're going to die, and you die. However, according to this approach, they're saying that what was the impact of that particular carbon. So according to the opinion that we're citing, that said it had one horn, meaning it only saved Adam at that moment. So the Alshech is saying it means that it bought him time and it earned him the right to make provision. But it just helped him then that he shouldn't die right away.
Right.
Okay, and then he says something mysterious over here, which I'm not sure, I'm trying to work out. Meaning, we know that the 70 years, why didn't he get a full 1,000 years? Because 70 years was given to David HaMelech. So you see that really, well, 1 second, let's just see the words here, and then I'm going to make my point. It says, V'shivim shana, the 70 years, Sha'am Rabbeinu Zal, that Chazal says, Shenesharu me'a'elef, that were remainder of the 1,000 that were given to Adam, L'dorot olam, that was a provision for the generations. Ach lo ho'il gam la'atid lavo, but it didn't help even for the future. V'gam zeh me'atam ha'kodem, and that's also for the previous reason, kibal avam. Meaning he's saying that since, I don't know what he means that the 70 years did not, I don't know who he's going according to, because the only 70 years that I know about are David HaMelech, but he's saying that somehow Adam Rishon used these 70 years to make provision for the future, and that did not work out for him because this carbon only helped him then. It didn't allow for the provision of the future. I just wanted to point out, I would think just the opposite, that think about it like this, there's a time loop here. Adam Rishon brought a carbon, and David HaMelech is saying, you know what, that carbon that Adam brought, maybe there was something lacking, but I'm going to rectify it. The carbon that I'm going to bring is going to be even greater. So now, what do we say is the lacking of the carbon of Adam Rishon? That it only earned him time, but he wasn't able to use that carbon to make a merit for the future.
Right.
Wait, it's not true.
Right.
Because it bought him time. What did he do with that time? He made provision for David. David
Right.
is him, and David's better carbon is a rectification for that carbon.
Right.
So I'm just putting out that out there so you can
Yeah.
think about something and give yourself fun when you're waiting for the bus. Okay. So the Alshech goes further. So our verse in Bereshit, right? That through God, God is, He's the one dispatching after the sin. So it was from Hashem, Yatzah Davar, that the event happened, that after the sin, that he was sent, Adam was sent to go bring a korban in order to expand, that it should extend his life or extend his chances. So what the Alshech is saying over here is, after this discussion of the two different opinions of how we understand the verse in Tehillim as to the korban of Adam Rishon. So remember, we had a question. What is, the verse says that he was expelled from the garden to serve the land that he was taken from. And then it says, and then he was expelled or exiled or divorced. Right? So, right, I was going in stages of how to understand the words, right? Meaning, literally means divorce, but it means exiled or expelled, right? Meaning the first one is to be sent out. Meaning there's a difference. Why does he use both verbs? Right? And also, what does it mean that he was sent to work the land that he was taken from? Because now he's being kicked out of Gan Eden, where he can't cultivate the land and protect it. So what we're referring to here? So the Alshech is going to bring it home now. Okay. So where was he? So he mentioned before the Midrash that Adam Rishon brought a korban, and he said, when did he ever bring a korban? Where do you see in the Psukim? So the Alshech is saying that's what's happening right over here. When it says that he was sent to serve the land that he was taken from, what he's going to explain is that he was sent, that God gave him a mission, l'shalcho, la'avod, to bring a korban, which is called avodah, right from the place that he was taken from which was that dirt, from the makom hamikdash, the mizbech. Meaning this is where Hashem's saying, you know what, you should bring a korban now, and hopefully it will stand you in good stead. So this korban that Adam Rishon brought, this is where he was sent by God to do it. Okay? And through this story, right, Hashem is showing us himself how great his humility is and how his mercy and his kindness with his creatures. He didn't just scream at Adam right there in anger in the garden and expel him forever. That's not what happened. And he didn't even tell him over there that he's kicking him out, certainly without ever coming back. He broke the news to him slowly. Kav lekav, point by point. Shilcho la'akriv karbano. First he said, you know what? Something terrible happened here. You need to bring a korban. So he sent him to bring a sacrifice. And he told him, you know what? This is inappropriate to do it here. You should leave Gan Eden and go bring your korban, l'makom kaparaso, to the place of your atonement, asher lokach mishan, that you were brought there. Meaning, the mizbeach is over there because there's a special place that you have to go to for atonement. It's not okay to try to bring atonement right where you've become persona non grata. Go to that place where you were made from, right, which will be ma'or rachamim on you, and that's a place for you to bring a sacrifice to atone for yourself. Hu makom hamizbech shebahar hamoria. That is the place, literally, where the dust that was gathered to make the dough that God made the golem of Adam Rishon from, right? That was the place of the altar on the Mount of Moriah.
Which is outside Gan Eden, surprisingly.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. Because it's in the physical world.
Right.
And also, this is what's very nice here is it brings the contrast even sharper between his korban and the Akedah. Because those were the first two, meaning those were the two korbanot on that place. I mean, if he was the first one to bring a korban on Har Moriah, you always thought that the first person to ever bring a korban on Har Moriah was El Shel Yitzchak.
Right.
Okay? Same place. V'sham yavod avoda, and there he should do holy service. The same word for avodah, which means to cultivate or to work or to labor or to be enslaved. It also means to serve and also holy service. Karbanot. Hu karban shorpar makrin mafrish shehikriv. And that karban was the sacrifice of the bull cow with the horn and the hoof. Kanoda mirabateinu zal, as is known from our sages. Ubazen nimtza oved et ha'adama kechorish ve'oved la'atzmicha letaken et asher erira Hashem k'amro arura ha'adama ba'avurecha. Okay, so and through this, he will be able to actually cultivate the land through plowing and labor, in order to cause it to grow and to rectify that that God had cursed it. Like the verse says that the earth is cursed because of you. So ata now al yidei ritzoy hakarban, through the entreating and the finding grace in God's eyes of the bringing of the sacrifice, b'makom kaparaso, at the place of his atonement, kisham shefa kedusha tamid, that at the makom hamikdash there is a constant influx of divine sanctity. Hu sha'ar shamayim, that is the portal to heaven. V'zeu amro, and that's what the verse means when it says la'avod et ha'adama, in order to cultivate the earth, asher lukach misham, that he was taken from there. That means in actually to serve God, bring a sacrifice from the place of the land that he was taken from, which is the place of his atonement, which is the altar, where there is a steady, constant flow of sanctity.
So when God says that you should work the land,
he's not talking about working the land.
He's saying that you should give a korban.
He's saying bring a korban, and through that you can achieve atonement, that ultimately the land will be cultivated. It's a double layer of meaning. In deep, it doesn't really mean. It sounds like he's saying go serve the land, but it doesn't mean that, because that's asher lukach misham. So asher lukach misham that you're taken from makes us realize that avodah here means a korban. And so then why is it said like that on the surface? It sounds like Torah, because that korban is meant to fix the earth, that he can finally go back to work there. Okay? Kimimakom kaparasa nivrav, because the place of his atonement, that he can bring atonement, he was created. Shal yidei karban zeh, that through this particular sacrifice, b'tshuva, with repentance, yitukan b'tzad ma, there will be some minimal level at least, of rectification. Lo higid lo shahaya gerushav gmurim, and at that point he didn't tell him, I'm sorry, Adam, your expulsion is total. That was only at the beginning of the next verse. So we'll find that sending him out and then expelling him was he didn't, and not only that, but he didn't want to tell him straight there. So once he was gone already, he's like, I'm sorry, Adam, you're not coming back. Okay? It's derech eretz. It's also, you don't kick somebody out of a place when they're actually there. You escort them out and then you tell them not to come back. Okay. V'hine ha'ole al rucho shel Adam haya lachzor hakach. Could it have occurred? Could it have come up in the spirit of Adam that he would actually return to Gan Eden after this? Amnam hu yitbarach gersha shelo yashuvod. However, meaning because lest he had, whatever his presumptions were, that's when, God blessed be, he told them that he was exiled forever and he will never return. V'zeo amro, and that's what the verse means when it says, Vayigaresh et Adam, v'lo she'amar lo befanav shelo yashuv. He didn't tell him in his face that he shouldn't come back. This was already after he had gone to Har Moriah, and only there he got the news. So in a way, Vayigaresh, to be divorced, that this is actually an apt verb over here, because it means that he'll never come back. V'lo she'amar lo, meaning not in his current iteration, obviously. V'lo she'amar lo befanav shelo yashuv. V'im kain, and if this is true, ech haya hagerushin, how was this divorce officiated? Halohu ki vayashkem mikadem lagan eden ve'etlat acherev. Okay, so I don't think we ever read that verse inside the whole verse. So for the benefit of the end of this piece, let's look inside. Okay, I'm going to start with the verse, the first verse. I'm going to do both of them. Okay. Vayishalcheu Adonai Elohim migan Eden, and Havai Elokim sent him, dispatched him from the Garden of Eden, la'avodat ha'adama, in order to serve, to cultivate the earth, asher lukach misham, that he was taken from there. And we explained what that really means just now. And then it says, we explained that he was dispatched actually from Gan Eden to the land that he was taken from, that he was fashioned from, meaning Har HaMoriah, the place of the altar, in order to bring a karban that would eventually allow him to cultivate et ha'adama. Okay? And then the next verse says, Vayigaresh et ha'adam, and then God divorced him or exiled him, banished him. Vayashkein, and he settled him, mikedem legan Eden, east of the Garden of Eden. Vayashkein, he set up, mikedem legan Eden, east of Eden, et akruvim, the cherubs, these angels. Ve'et lahat hacherev hamitapechet, and the fiery sword that spins, that switches, that turns, lishmar, in order to guard et derech etzachai. So you put a doorman in front. Okay. So, first we said he was dispatched. He went on a mission. He brought a karban, and then God said, "You're not coming back." Halohu ki vayashke mikenim lagan Eden. So that act of stationing permanently with the vayashke shikun, the settling there of these angels with the sword, right? Veslat acherev, right? The fiery sword. Leman kishiyashuv lo yuchal likanes. He did that in order to prevent Adam from entering when he returned. V'zeh lishmar et derech, and that's to safeguard the path of the tree of life. V'zeh vayishachem, and that's why he was sent, meaning to Har HaMoriah. V'achar kach vayigarish. First it says he was sent, meaning he was dispatched, and then he was excluded from coming back. Ki tchila shilcho, because initially he was sent somewhere else. V'achar kach gershu, and then he was told, don't bother coming back. Come dubar, like we have explained.
The only difficulty I have is that this is all in the context of the punishment for Adam, as opposed to the punishment of Chava. So, but we're assuming that she was also kicked out with him. That she also went.
Why is this told as if it's just Adam? So I just want to show you. I'll show you a slick answer to that. Ha-Adam. That's not Adam, that's humanity. Vayishacheu Hashem Elokim, it's going on Ha-Adam, okay? Vayigarish et Ha-Adam. So, Veha-Adam. So the question here is, and he's going to ask, if Adam is the man and Ha-Adam is the species, the next pasuk about Adam Yodas Chavish, that doesn't make sense. He's going to ask this. But over here, it's Ha-Adam, so obviously Chava was included in this mission. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's 10:33. Perhaps we should